Yo, 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 what's up, everybody? It's comedian Edgar Rivera, and I'm joined today by my brothers, comedian Eric Nieves and Dr. Dan Radner, and you're listening to another episode of Brothers in Arms, a new way for men to talk. What's up, brothers?
How you doing, Edgar? Dr. Dan, how are you?
It's great to see you guys. Good to be here with you.
Nice, nice. Thank you, Dr. Dan. I want the listeners and viewers to know that Dr. Dan is in vacation right now, and he took time away from his vacation to be here. That's how dedicated he is to Brothers in Arms. So thank you, Dr. Dan. How's that vacation going?
It's going great. First I had to catch up on work for the first week. That's the first part of vacation. Then the second week, I've been relaxing. I even wrote a song. We'll get into that another time. It's not a 90s hip hop song. I'm sure you will not be surprised.
I'm so curious, Eric.
I'm dying to hear this song.
I want a sample.
I'm so fascinated by the thought of even hearing this song in any way, shape, or form. Dan,
oh my God. We have to do it now, Dr. Dan. You brought it up, and now the viewers and listeners are going to want to hear this song later on. And,
Hey,
season 2.
Our show is all about being open. I'm not gonna hide any part of me. So, and I'd love to share it. I've actually written like 15 of them now.
Nice. And what do you do with them once you write them?
I'm gonna make an album.
Oh, I was kidding. But
No, I'm serious.
Dr. Dan, dropping beats.
No, I'm gonna blow up. Yes, I am gonna make an album.
Hey, I did not say that. I said I'm gonna make an album. We'll see if
we gotta think positive. You're gonna go there. You're gonna go all the way. What about you, Eric? How you been, brother?
I'm good. I went to a wedding recently. By the way, it should be illegal to have outdoor weddings in Florida in August. I don't know why they thought that was a great idea. It was so hot. It rained,
safe and hot at the same time.
It was so hot, and then it completely thunderstormed right as the ceremony started, and it only stopped raining as soon as they finished their vows. So it was like it was a beautiful ceremony, but Florida in August is no joke.
Is that a thing? That you have any Latinos in this wedding being like, yo, that's a thing, that's the somebody's crying and having.
No, yeah, my mother said it was the saints blessing them with water, and I said it was just rain, but it did seem to make the bride feel a little better when I told her. I said my mother said that was a very spiritual thing that happened, and she was like, okay, because
okay.
Listen, I tried.
I could just hear. Man, you good? That's good. Every time it rains is a good thing, right?
Oh yeah, and her family's actually from Barbados, so they have that same Caribbean vibe. Yeah. That Puerto Ricans have. So they were all chillaxed about it. As long as they could reach their booze, everything was good. Like that was really the focus. As long as we didn't run out of bottles, everything's fine.
That's so what's up, man. Well, yeah. I'm glad you made it back safe. And it never rains in Barbados, by the way. That's what I heard. I've been to Barbados a lot, and the first time I went there, it never rains. And the first day I went there, it rained. Isn't that something?
Of course. Of course that was gonna happen.
They were blessing me. But yeah, man, I'm glad to be back with you guys, man. I don't know about you guys, but I look forward to this. I stress it a lot, like throughout the week. I mean, like, we got to record this episode. But then once we get on here, it's like it just flows, and it's a thing to look forward to. So thank you for being here. Thank you to the listeners and the viewers that we have. Thank you for your comments, your feedback. You guys have been great. If you haven't done so already, like Dr. Dan said, subscribe. And if you have any questions, for us, please comment down on the videos, and we'll get back to you guys. Either Dr. Dan, Eric, or myself will get back to you guys. Dr. Dan, I wanted to take this time because I got people sending me questions a lot. I got like last week's viewers, they send me a question, they send the questions, and this week I got a very interesting question, but it came from a female.
Hey, that's good.
It is good, and I love the fact that women are listening. So shout outs to the women who are here listening, just trying to maybe get to know their men a little bit better. But I got an interesting question from a female, and I think we should start off with this one, because I don't wanna let them know that we don't listen to them. I just wanna. But it was a very, very interesting question. I've been thinking about it all day on how to present it to you, because she wrote like a paragraph. I was like, and I'm not reading this. You know how I can't read in public, Dr. Dan. So I'm not definitely reading this. But I'm going to start off with this question, and it came from a listener. And she basically wrote, she was in a marriage. She was in a marriage, in an abusive marriage. She was in an abusive marriage and domestic, abuse, and her ex-husband was a police officer, and she lived a nightmare with this guy. They had a kid together, and they broke up. They went their separate ways. Great father, not to take nothing away from him. Great dad to his son. They shared they shared custody, and he was great. But then last year during COVID, he passed away to COVID, and he passed away to COVID, and now everybody's recognizing him as a hero. Like the force is using him as one of the officers they lost to COVID, and his son sees him as a hero. But her question for me to ask you was, how do you mourn the devil?
Mm-hmm.
So now what she's dealing with is she has a little boy, he's 11 years old, who loves his dad, sees his dad, as the greatest person in the world, but she's holding this secret inside. And so she wants to know, how do you mourn the devil? And I was like, oh my God, how do you even ask that? But can you have anything to say on this?
I actually have a lot to say on this. I mean, I've even done a video that is essentially this, because you can mourn people when they're still alive. Even it's not just when they're dead. There are times where you want to move on from something, or you want to get to more peace about it, and that's really what mourning is about. Mm-hmm. It's not really about spending time being upset necessarily. It's about spending time getting to peace. But I did want to also just say just a quick shout out to the women who do watch this. This isn't a show that's only for men. It's a show about men. Mm-hmm. And, men and women can watch it. So I'm glad you guys are tuning in too. It'll help us with the discussion. And this is a good example of that. This is a woman trying to interpret this man who was in her life and try to figure out what was this. Mm-hmm. And I think, her question at heart is, how do you get to peace about this? And there's two different parts to that, really. There's how do you get to peace in her own relationship with him, and how do you get to peace with it in relation to her son? How do you carry that forward? It's funny because when you said little boy, I was kind of assuming it was a younger kid. 11 is still a really young kid, but
I don't know. I think that's a little boy. No,
look, it is, but
he's old enough. But he's old enough to have a concept of what's going on. Like he's not
right,
3 or 4 years old.
He could get married.
Yeah, the reason I'm bringing it up is that the age of the kid is going to determine how you interact that way. And an 11-year-old, look, it's never going to be easy to lose a father at any point. I can tell you from experience, at least in the time I lost him. But an 11-year-old has some advantages to some other ages, and some of it is that he can learn to understand the nuances of this person his father was. He can be more than one thing. He doesn't have to be only a hero or only a villain. In some ways, it's a great lesson in life to recognize, listen, in some ways, he really was both. But with respect to this woman who asked the question, and thank you for bringing this question to that viewer, you've got to have a place for yourself in it. You have to have a place where you can say, you know what? Externally, outside of me, I'll deal with it in a way that honors the part of him that was a hero, because, an officer of the law, he probably did a lot of great stuff, and he put himself in harm's way. There's all kinds of important things that really happened there. And I guess the way I would think about it is this. You do not have to take away the part of him that was a hero from the son, but inside yourself, you can carry on what I call, it's like an internal track, as I call it. We're doing a podcast on this soon. And the idea is you get to have your own feelings about it that have nothing to do with anyone else. You don't need to check in with anybody about it. You don't need to say anything about it. In a way, if you want to mourn the devil, as she put it, you have to be able to hate them. Truly. They can be a hero to people outside, but you can be angry about it. You can be raging inside about the fact that here's this person who put me through all this torment, and they're getting all these accolades. Just remember this. There's more than one truth, and that can exist at the same time. I don't mean there's more than one truth, like everything's subjective. I mean, there can be more than one truth, and then you can honor all of those truths, but you've got to honor yours. You have to honor the part where you you hate him, and he tortured you.
Mm-hmm.
But it's got to be hard for her to know and to go through what she went through with this person, and it being the complete opposite of the image that is being portrayed or how he's generally known and regarded. So I mean, that's got to tear her up, because it's like, you know, it's got to drive her nuts that no one knows her pain. Like no one knows what this man actually was or was to her. And I can imagine she must be struggling with that. Like, I'm sure she doesn't want to ruin the relationship that he had with his son, or the loving memories with his son. But on the other hand, she must be dying to have the truth come out, you know, so that her truth could be known. It's like she's lost her voice all over again in a way.
But that's why.
Are you sure you're not a therapist, Eric?
This dude is great,
pretty
right?
Good.
He's pretty good.
Yeah, he's good.
I like Eric said, I feel her pain, you know, because here we are as men on bringing awareness to the fact that we need to talk, not to hold things in. But then here's a perfect example of something that sometimes we gotta hold in. You know what I'm saying? And it's like you said, like she could deal with the truth. You know, if you hate him as much as you want. Never hide those emotions. Never go, you know, if you feel sad, mad, whatever it is you have to go through. But it's crazy how sometimes, you know, you have to live with this. So I could only feel her pain and living like that every time someone says something good and you're like, you don't really know, you know?
Yep. Well, I also would say, you know, when it comes to letting it out, when it comes to talking to people, pick your people. You know, just because you can't say it to most people doesn't mean you can't say it to anyone. Mm-hmm. Find somebody you can say it to, because she's going to need that. And Eric, your point was right on. I mean, I find that usually, it's not just me that's found this. There's been studies that show this, and certainly lots of people who talk about the experience of it, that it's not even always the abuse itself that is the worst part. It's not being believed. That makes the people feel like they are crazy. And you're not crazy. And you do have to find somebody. It can't just be all... I mean, look, some people can do it all in themselves, but that's pretty hard. You usually need at least somebody, a couple people, to validate what you've been through.
Mm-hmm. And it's hard. And I got to tell people, man, it's hard to keep on trying, you know, for us to tell someone, yeah, keep trying until you find someone that believes you, that could, you know, understand your pain and what you're going through and you could vent out to. So yeah, to the listener, thank you for this wonderful question. I mean, I think it's on point. I mean, and it's hard. It's for domestic abuse, because it's a really touchy subject, you know, the domestic abuse. And I've heard this numerous times that police officers, you know, firefighters, you know, that I've met a lot of females who've been in domestic, you know, disputes with police officers, and I'm wondering now if it's the job, you know, the job that they have to be a macho, they have to be out there and protect themselves against everyone else, and all that anger they hold in, and then they don't speak about it, and they go home and who better, you know, take out the anger or the frustration out in your significant other at home, which is not right. But then at the same time, it brings awareness to the fact that, yeah, most of these people need to talk. As men, we need to talk. And this is the reason why, because then, you know, the wrong person could be taken out. You know,
well, it's also scarier. They're armed. What makes that situation even more scary, you know, not so much in the case of a firefighter, but for a police officer, there's always a gun in the house. You know what I mean? So I mean, and that kind of fear of knowing that he has a weapon and he's threatened to use it. I mean, that puts it on a whole nother level. And, you know, abuse is usually about control. So I can imagine they have such little control in their jobs that there's very little you can control as a cop. The situation will play itself out. There's not much you can control as a firefighter. The fire breaks out, you have to deal with it. Mm-hmm. So maybe they're overcompensating for the lack of control they have in their work lives, and they're just bringing it home to have something to control. But I mean, you do read the numbers and the statistics, and there's tend to be a lot of cases of DV issues between firefighters and police officers and their spouses. That's not something that you just notice. Like, there are numbers that back that up.
Yeah.
Well, and it makes a lot of sense. There would be, like what both of you were saying. They're coming home. they're bringing probably a lot of trauma with them. I think about this with, people in the military coming home from war as well, or not even just war, but whatever their service was. There's often ways that they're bringing the trauma home. Now, this is the important part of that question, though, because there's the trauma of the person, and we can be very understanding of that. But then when their trauma starts to traumatize someone else, then there's a whole other problem. So that second person who's dealing with kind of the trauma coming in on their lives and causing their own trauma, they have to have space for their own trauma experience. I like what we're saying across the board here, but there's a lot to talk about in here. It's a very meaty subject.
It's a lot, and then the scariest part about the story and the question that you brought up, Edgar, is that, she's obviously been married or was married to him for a very long time, had an 11-year-old child, and yet she couldn't find one person to share this with that believed her and supported her and made her not feel like it was something that she was doing wrong. It's set, you know what I mean? It makes me heavy hearted. And I hope that, like Dr. Dan says, that even if it's just one friend, you could just start off with one and expand it from there, one that you really trust, and kind of build that circle of support. So that way she can get what she needs, because, until she resolves it, she's going to have a really tough time explaining this to her son if she ever decides to explain it to him one day. And Dr. Dan, let me ask you this, because I'm kind of curious. Do you think, or when do you think it would be appropriate, if at all appropriate, to discuss this issue with him?
I think it's already appropriate. And when I say that, though, I guess I'll say this. There's varying degrees to which you could talk to somebody. When the kid is like 30 years old and she wants to give him more insight into it, that's one good way to think about it, is you don't have to just have this one conversation. Try to think about it as something that can unfold over time. But it's already appropriate to talk to him about the basics. I think as long as it's done in a way that maintains that his viewpoint is okay, his viewpoint is valid, then she can talk about her viewpoint. This is a mistake that a lot of people make. There's room for multiple viewpoints. They can really all be kind of true in a way. As long as his idea is, his belief is being respected, but she's bringing in this other stuff. And I would do it gently. I wouldn't just come out and tell the whole story. Maybe she starts.
That'd be messed up, right? Just come out and tell everything.
And I'm sure there's a ton of stuff. Look, if she's calling him the devil, there's got to have been a lot of stuff. So, you could start off by being like, look, he was heroic in his job, but he was actually really, really incredibly difficult with me, and he could be very attacking of me, and it was very hard for me. I think it should be real. That's my answer, is kind of, let's find a way to temper it enough so that the son can just start getting used to the idea and start metabolizing that a little bit. But it not only can be real, I think it's better if it is. And here's why. People pick up on the reality anyway, even if it's not being said. That's the funny thing about this show, where we're talking about things, is there's plenty of times where even if you're not saying something, everybody knows anyway. Most of the time people know. Mm-hmm. Now, there are times where we're so walled off that nobody knows. But generally speaking, if people are around you enough, they know something's up. The son is going to know something's up with her.
I'm pretty sure he probably even noticed. Well,
I was just gonna say that.
I don't know how old he was when they were when they split up, but I'm pretty sure you tend to notice those things as a kid, especially when you're in two different, you got two different families basically. The dad is always talking crap about the mom is always talking, you could tell that. So I'm pretty sure he knows, and
he had to feel some kind of tension in the house, right? There's no way. I'm pretty sure they try to do as much out of his view, but kids feel emotions. They don't even understand the emotions that they're getting a vibe off of, but they know something's off. They don't know exactly what it is, but they know, because they're like emotional sponges, kids. You know what I mean? They just sense things in the room that we as adults think we're hiding very effectively, when actually we're not.
All right. Cool.
I couldn't have said it better myself. They're soaking it up. They're taking all, and it takes a millisecond for them to pick it up.
Mm-hmm.
We might as well acknowledge it.
Yeah.
Nice.
Because if you don't acknowledge it, I mean, not to say he's going to follow in his father's footsteps, but the cycle of abuse usually starts from parent to child and it continues on. So not only for her sake that this truth should be known, but for his sake as well, so that he so he can be aware that even a good man can make bad mistakes and he'll make good choices. You know what I mean? And I love that you said, Dan, nobody's just one thing. I would hate if any of us were judged on the worst thing we did. The world would look completely different at us, off that one thing. But we're more than one thing. We're a bunch of things. We're a bunch of things to a bunch of different people. So, and I think that's important. And that needs to be part of the lesson too. Like you said, Dan, he was heroic and horrific, and both can be true.
Very well said.
So, thank you guys both, man. And I hope the viewer gets, some questions answered in her question. And thank you for submitting your question. To everyone at home or viewing this, if you have a question or concern that you don't want to speak it out to someone, just write it in a comment and we'll talk about it just like this. Just know to that viewer that you have 3 guys here who believe you. Don't stop talking, don't stop talking until you find that person. Don't hold that stuff in as much, and and keep your head up. That's all I can say. And with that being said, since we are in the topic, we're going to go into old news. Right, so Dr. Dan's about to introduce old news, but then Eric is going to bring some interesting old news, which will keep us in that same domestic abuse, theme. So,
all right, so
you ready?
I'm going to do my introduction because I know you guys love my introduction.
I love the introduction, Dr. Dan.
But before we do it, one last thing, which is when people are trying to open up, if somebody shuts you down, please do not get discouraged by that. There's going to be plenty of people who will not be able to hear you because of their own problems. It's not because of you or because it's overwhelming. So I just want to put that out there.
Thank you.
Push through that. Just one last thing. Now, I don't know how I segue from that into something. That was an inside joke.
That was a good segue right there. He said, "Now."
So now we're going to do old news, maybe from yesterday.
I'm waiting for that. Well, Dan, you should write a song to play after you make that little.
That's a good idea. I'll make a note of that.
Listen, you're already a songwriter, so
the show could be all the music on the show could be written by Dr. Dan. How awesome would that be?
That's what I mean. Music and lyrics and advice by Dr. Dan.
I love it.
So let's go, Eric. Let's get into this old news. What you got for us, bro?
Back on the subject of violence. I know it's not a cheerful subject. The question you generated actually got me interested in looking back at stories regarding men in domestic violence, with men being the victim, which you don't hear a lot about. Every once in a while, you'll see a Lifetime original movie where Nancy McKeon is beating somebody up, right? But people almost laugh at it. They almost look at it as a comedy because of the physicality of a male compared to the female. In most cases, the male is bigger, so people just assume that men can't be victims. And I'm here to tell you, I looked up some numbers. I was really, really surprised at the numbers. Like, check this out. This is a true story. 1 in 3 men experience some kind of sexual, physical violence or stalking from an intimate partner. 1 of every 3 guys. Okay? So that means one of us has a stalker or has been physically abused or sexually abused. But I mean, but think about that, guys. When you think about domestic violence, and you don't normally think about men, and probably because it's almost considered embarrassing to be a male and a victim of domestic violence. I would think they're probably even less likely to even acknowledge it or talk about it.
I mean, no guy ever wants to go to work and be like, "Yo, how was your weekend?" "Oh, my wife beat me up." And no guy will ever say that. That's why I think it's not spoken, and that's a very high number. There's a lot of people hiding stuff out there that they don't share, and then it's a very difficult thing, for a man to admit something like that. How do you feel about this, Dr. Dan?
Yeah, well, I think you guys hit the nail on the head because it's really all about shame, and there's a ton of shame is the worst. It's the worst feeling anyone can have, really. In fact, on other episodes where we talk about like suicidal ideation, shame is a big part of that, and so is trauma. But I can imagine that any man in a situation where they're getting abused legitimately, listen, we know what it's like being a guy, even just being a boy, like on the playground. You don't want to admit anything like that.
Mm-hmm.
Then you throw in that you're like a grown man in a relationship with a woman. It's funny, people don't use their imaginations, because sometimes the man might be getting abused because they're not going to defend themselves. That's something that can have. I don't know what percentage of that third would be that, but it's got to be some. Right. Because as the bigger in size person that could do a lot of damage, got to control yourself. But if you're getting actually beaten up, I mean, think about it. What would it be like if you actually had some kind of visible bruise or something like that? Not many men are going to go and be like, yeah, my wife hit me. On top of it, it's a feeling that people would feel ashamed about, even if it wasn't, a woman abusing a man. They just don't want to talk about abuse in their relationship. So it's loaded with so many issues at the same time.
And I want everybody to understand that it doesn't necessarily need to be a physical hit. Abuse is not physical. It could be verbal. It could be, putting your man down, shaming him, like making him feel less of a man. That could destroy. I tell people, man, sometimes words could hurt more than actual punches, and, it's crazy how, there is a lot of men dealing with this, and they don't talk about it. You know what I'm saying? And it needs to be brought up, and it needs to be awareness to this, because usually when you say domestic abuse, the first thing you think of is a female,
almost
which
all
is
the time,
interesting. Almost all the time, and I just want people to know that it could go both ways. It could go both ways. No matter how big you are, just because you're a man doesn't justify that. It doesn't. I was brought up differently. My father always told me, you respect women. You don't hit women. You don't treat women bad. You know what I'm saying? But, there's a lot of people who are, and then what that does to a person as well. How does somebody who's in a domestic abusive relationship, how do you move forward from that? You know what I'm saying? As the victim.
One of the hardest things about abuse in general, whether it's physical, sexual, or emotional, or verbal, is the person tends to come to believe that they deserve at least they start to wonder, did I deserve the abuse? And that's one of the hardest parts. And I like that you bring up the point that it does not have to be physical, because we have an assumption that abuse goes male to female, which it does more often than the other way around. But still, a third of all men. I
read that. Yes, the numbers from the CDC. I was blown away by that number. It was unbelievable.
And the assumption also is that it's physical. I liked Edgar's point about how much words can hurt. There's that old expression, sticks and stones can break your bones, but words will never hurt you. It really should be sticks and stones will break your bones, but words will ring in your ears for 45 years and maybe drive you to suicide. Like they can be very, very harsh. And I can't tell you how often I will be seeing a patient, and the thing that reverberates much more than the physical act is the cutting words. They are, which is not to dismiss the physicality of things, right, or sexual abuse. There are times where that's worse, the level of invasion and the level of danger. So I'm not meaning to downplay that. I'm more meaning to bring up the idea of the verbal abuse and emotional abuse and how bad that can be.
Yeah, because you could get hit, feel the pain, and then you move on. Tell me I'm a loser, and that will mentally mess with me. And some people be like, okay, they brush it off, like I'm not a loser. But then deep down inside, when you start entertaining thoughts like that and abusive words like that, that will mess up anybody. You know what I'm saying? So it's definitely a touchy subject to talk about. But I feel like,
and imagine, guys are raised not to hit women, right? Most guys. All right, that's the thing. Like, Edgar, you said your father said, I raised to respect women, mm-hmm, right? To respect women, not to lay a hand on a woman. So can you imagine what a man would be going through in his head? He's getting either physically or verbally abused by his partner, and he can't respond out of a sense of being a gentleman, but he'll just sit there and take it. You know what I mean? So it's like, I'm not to say that he should respond. He shouldn't. But, you know, there's being a gentleman, and then there's letting yourself just be abused. You know what I mean? I mean, you have to at least try to say something, I would think. I mean, I know it's hard, but.
How do you claim self-defense as a man against a woman?
Well, you know, the way Eric was kind of alluding to this, and I think I can kind of pinpoint it some. The thing you want to do is not retaliate, but set a boundary. That, you know, it's like you draw the line somewhere. You don't have to draw the line physically, but you say, like, listen, I'm not going to stay in this room with you, or I'm not going to stay in this house with you, or I'm not going to stay in this relationship with you potentially. So, and this is all very hard. I'm not saying this is easy to do, but what we need to be thinking about is how to set the boundaries. And I did want to also just address one other thing based on something Eric said, which is, you know, we have this idea that we let ourselves get abused, and there are ways in which that can be the case sometimes. I certainly have felt it in my own life where I'm like, why did I do that? Why did I let it get that far? But I also just want to put in a plug for people to be softer on yourself about it. It's hard to recognize that, to put in the boundary. You're kind of in a whole whirlwind of events trying to figure that out at that time. So just a plug for that.
Good stuff.
Yeah, I mean, I probably that probably wasn't the best choice of words, because really victims don't allow themselves to be victims. They're victims because there's someone is attacking them, and not because they're allowing it to happen. So a good call on that.
Yeah, but, Eric, I wasn't picking apart your words at all. I just was saying, you know, I just know victims of abuse and just people in general, we're so hypersensitive to certain words. So it's one of the things that I tend to do is pick up on little words. So I'm sorry to. I'm not nitpicking.
But actually, no. It's making a great point, because that's one thing as we take this journey together. Well, as men learning how to talk, part of learning how to talk is learning to choose our words more carefully in some instances, so that we can help people, you know, and help them get through a rough time. And sometimes we could just be talking, and, you know, sometimes you don't think about the words that you're using and how they can impact somebody else. Because I don't think I've ever, and I've worked with people that have been in DV relationships. I've never met one that felt like they allowed it to happen. They were just being attacked, you know, they didn't, you know, so with men, I haven't had to work with as many men that have been in domestic violence issues. I'd be interested to see what kept them from coming forward, because, you know, a lot of women won't report it. Like the woman that gave in the question, she didn't put in a report or anything, or report it because she was afraid of what he would do to her. So I'm wondering, is that also part of what's keeping guys from speaking up? Is that they're just deathly afraid of what she might end up doing?
Mm-hmm. I mean, depending.
I definitely think some big proportion of it is that. It's interesting though, because I also wonder, I wonder this with women who are being assaulted and abused by men also. There's also just the component of shame separate from fear. So it's hard to tease out. I just don't know the answer. I think we would need to, let's talk to people. Let's keep our ears to the ground to find out what's driving it. But I certainly could see a lot of it being driven by the fear. I mean, if somebody's already been abusive to you, and then you're thinking, what's this going to be like when I put a boundary in place? That's why people don't put in the boundaries. You know, there's the shame that I think prevents people from talking about it, or maybe dealing with what goes on in themselves. But I do think that a big part of it is the fear of, what's this abusive person now going to do?
But I'm glad we're bringing it up, because you don't really hear a lot about people talking about men in domestic violence relationships. Like, you know, and part of what this show is designed to do is to bring up conversations that maybe guys wouldn't bring up on their own, and maybe plant the seed so maybe they can start talking about it. Like, you know, for instance, this is another fact that when I was reading up on domestic violence with men, and I was shocked. It said one out of 38 men in the U.S. have been the victim of a rape or an attempted rape. 1 out of 38 men.
That's crazy.
I mean, but you don't hear stats like that, or you don't really hear too much about that because of the role that you think, oh no, you know, come rape me, you know, like we're like, yeah, you could rape me, sure, yeah, let's go upstairs, you know. But so just because we're men, that crime doesn't apply to them, and I can imagine what kind of shame they must have felt in you know, because supposedly what man wouldn't want to have a woman jump on him, right?
Yeah. Well, and I you know, it's interesting because I don't know if you guys agree with this, but I think you probably will. When I think of the term rape, it has so much shame in it. I don't even totally know why. It's something that I want to keep thinking about. I mean, I get it, certainly, but I think there's so much shame in it somehow. It's as if there's been a failure to protect the self somehow, or some sense that they did something wrong. I'm also curious about that stat. Did that stat, you may not know this, Eric, but did that stat include men being raped by men? Was that
that is a good question. I'm actually looking it up right now.
All right.
And it just says either experienced completed or attempted rape victimization in their lifetime. It didn't break it down by gender. So,
okay. But listen,
I'm sure it's not just one gender. I'm sure it's both men and women, or that are part of the stats. But just the thought of that many men in the U.S. being a victim of a sexual crime like rape, it just blew my mind.
Well, this is another thing about consent that we can talk about at another point. But the other thing to remember is that there are plenty of times where people like supposedly consent because they allow it to be, but inside their own head, they're like, no, this is totally messed up. I mean, I bet you everyone out there listening to this has had an experience, hopefully not of rape, but of an experience where they did not want to do something, absolutely not, and they just went along with it because they were like, I can't say anything right now. And it's later that they're like, no, that was so messed up. Mm-hmm. That's happened to me thousands of times in my life in some variety. I think it happens for people, and when you think about it in terms of rape, that's on a very, very large scale. Very hard to deal with.
So to recap on this, it's very interesting. I would love to keep talking about this some more, but to recap, I mean, what I think is, personally, we need to talk. You know, I mean, the chances of men in domestic abuse and women in domestic abuse. For the women in domestic abuse, I mean, for their men, I like to believe that if you talk more, you will hold, you know, let go of that frustration, you know, and not hold it in, and then not take it home, you know, and then that's the problem, you know. For me personally, my ex-wife was the one that opened my eyes, you know, and I said this before in a previous episode, but she was the one that got me to open up and like start talking to other people, because I would keep everything in, and she was the only one that would get my frustrations. She was like, dude, you gotta talk to other people. I can't be your only person. And not until she opened my eyes, I realized, okay, cool, that's exactly what the problem is. So if you're listening to this right now, like, look, like the viewer who sent the question, just keep looking for someone, keep trying to talk, you know. Sometimes talking to our significant others is great, and, you know, being completely open with them is great, but sometimes we need another person to vent out to, so that person won't get all the heat, you know, that comes with it. So it's great. I think it's a great subject, and it should bring us right into our walking the walk, you know. And this walking the walk for me is very, very, it's going to be very deep. It's going to be very deep, and it was brought up by the viewer's question. And it was great that I could actually sit here and listen to you guys. And then, you know, and as I'm about to tell you what I'm about to tell you, that no one knows, you know, I had to dig. I had to dig. I can't even say it. Dig. That's the Latino in me. I have to dig. I have to dig.
Dig deep.
I have to dig very deep inside to get this. But so for everyone listening, walking the walk is I think it's the most important part of this show. I think this is the part where we open up, where we practice what we preach, where we walk the walk. I can't come on here, or Eric or Dr. Dan, and tell you that it's okay to talk if we don't, show an example ourselves. And that's what walking the walk is. Dr. Dan did it last week. So before I get into my walking the walk, I would like to talk about your walking the walk last week, and how do you feel about it? I think it was deep. It's crazy how sometimes we do these shows and we don't get to see what the show looks like into the show is up, So, and then you listen to it. There's so many things that you miss while we're doing it live, So I love to go back and listen to it. And your walking the walk last week was pretty deep. And to someone, it might have been like, no, it's great. But I saw it and I felt your pain. And I want to talk to you about it. How do you feel about it?
Well, I mean, first of all, I want to thank you both because I have a lot of experience. It's kind of like what I talked about before. Don't give up if you tell somebody and they don't get it or they brush it aside. I've had it brushed aside many, many times. But one thing I really appreciated was you guys, you heard me at a level that is not how people usually hear me. And I don't know, maybe some of it is I've gotten better at really putting it fully out there. In Walking the Walk, we try not to disguise our vulnerability at all and just be like, look, this is true. I mean, it's a really big deal to realize at 35 years old that in a way you never felt that kind of love at all. And it was so shocking to me to get that from a little baby and to realize, whoa. And, you guys were both great supports to me. Eric, I think I mentioned to you, you said some things that I was like, I got more out of this than I did out of virtually any therapy session.
Well, I mean, I just felt for you because just the emotional isolation that you must have had since you were a child, just feeling like people were just counting on you for stuff and there was no genuine love. And then to finally realize that genuine love, not even from your wife, but from your child. And for all that to come to you, that one realization in that one moment, and I just felt bad because of all the years that you lost feeling this way, and it must have felt horrible. And my heart went out to you because I was like, my God, it was like he was emotionally incapacitated until this little person just pulled the emotions out, So exactly I'm glad you found this place. I'm just sorry it took you so long to find it.
I really appreciate it. And, it also wasn't instantaneous. There was times where I had to continue to grow in that way. I have found lots of love since, but it's a totally different way of living where I'm like, oh, that's what people mean when they were talking about love. And I didn't feel it, but it really meant a lot to me that you guys got it.
No, thank you, man. Thank you
for sharing.
Definitely thank you for sharing. So now I guess it's my turn to walk the walk. And every time I do this, man, I break down. So if I break down, fellas, this is
got you.
Got your back.
I've been thinking ever since we started this. I've been thinking a lot. When it comes to this walking the walk, and I know that it's my turn. I try to think about what has bothered me. What what's inside that I want to let out. Good thing is that lately I've been thinking, and I've been realizing that some of the things that I thought that were big problem really weren't. So I'm learning how to brush those off. So when it came time to do this walking the walk, when I got the viewer's question, it sparked something in me. And we've been talking about it the whole episode, and it's domestic abuse. And I had to dig really far down for this because I was in a domestic abusive relationship. I'm 6'2", 240 pounds, and I was the one getting abused. And it's crazy. And as I think of it now, I think about my father and how he always told me, you never hate women, you respect women. I saw how my father respected my mom. I never saw my father raise a hand on my mother. They got into arguments like every relationship, but I never saw my father like physically hurt my mom that way. And here I am in a relationship, and it was for a very long time. For a very long time, I was in this relationship, and I kept this as a secret. I would get hit, and how do you come out? How do you come out and tell your boys, yo, my girl hits me? You know what I'm saying? How does that make you more of a man, or your boys, because sometimes, and I tell people the hardest thing about coming out and saying things and admitting, and opening up is the heat that comes with it. You know what I'm saying? So me sharing something like this, your boy, the wrong person, telling the wrong person, opening up to the wrong person could take advantage of something like that. Oh, get out of here before your girl hits you again, or whatever the case may be. You know what I'm saying? And thinking about your question, Eric, on why didn't I open? Why didn't I come out? I was living a double life. To everyone else, we had the perfect relationship. To everywhere we went, we were great. Everybody loved us together, but no one knew what I was really going through inside. And part of me, I mean, thinking about it now, I'm like, part of me was like, I obviously thought I loved this person. I was there, at the same time, but it was crazy. And my family noticed it, but they didn't even, pressure me to move forward. Sometimes your family sees things and they knew how crazy she was to a certain extent. And I never, I always kept it to myself. And then the last thing that she did to me was the one that I told myself, that's it, I can't hide this no more. And I'm gonna tell you guys, and it's creeping me out that I'm gonna say it, because as I said, only maybe a handful of people know about this that I trust with, like, to death, like that I actually opened up, and it hasn't even been that many, and you guys now. But the last time she did something to me, she actually tried to kill me. And it was crazy, because I thought about this viewer and her question, and it started bringing up my issues. And then I started realizing that I hit that so deep down inside that, as you guys were talking about this, now I'm like, like, wow, now answering my own question, why? And thank you, because it just made it easier for me to say it, But the last time something happened, I mean, it was crazy. I think the worst thing to be in a relationship is to be in a relationship when a woman's always accusing you of doing something, whether you're not. Whether you're not, that, you come home, where were you? Who are you talking to? Who are you this? Who are you this? And all these questions. And I wasn't, honestly, because I knew how she was. I was like, this girl catches me doing something, she'll kill me. This girl will kill me. People ask me, joking around after a little while, after we broke up, they're like, why you lasted so long? And I could honestly tell them, I was scared. I was scared to walk away from this person. Scared. I cared for her. I thought she would change. I thought the hits would go away. No one would notice. We could keep it quietly and pretend to be normal in front of everybody, which is the worst thing that I did, realizing it now. But make a long story short, she got home one day and found a message on my computer. And I'll tell you guys, I'm not afraid to tell you what happened. I'll tell you exactly what happened. I got a message from a girl, and she said, we should hang out, and I replied, this is what I replied. And I regret it. But, I said, we could hang out, but if we do, we have to do it on the low. That's all I replied. And one day I got home, I went for a bike ride, and when I was on my way back, she called me and she said, look, can we do this? And I was like, oh my gosh, she's in a good mood today, not realizing nothing, not realizing that I had left my computer completely wide open, that she could go through it. And when I got home and I opened the door, she was standing there with my laptop in her hands. I mean, in her hands, like the keyboard was in this hand and the screen was in this one. She said, who is so-and-so? And dude, it scared the shit out of me to the point that I started running. I ran. I started running, and she started running after me. I ran out the building. I made it to the car. I almost tried to lock the door, but she got in the car with me. She destroyed the whole car inside. She destroyed my face. She scratched my face all up, punched me. I was bleeding, broke my lip. wouldn't let me go. You know, I'm like, please let me go, please let me go. Everything broke the car from the inside out. Everything inside the car was destroyed, and she would not let me go. And it's crazy just thinking about it, because it's like you relive a moment, you know. And I remember like thinking to myself, how am I gonna get out of this? And at one point, I remember that I pushed her, pushed her. I pushed her. I pushed the shit out of her. You know, like she slammed against the window, and I finally got away. Finally got away. And at that very moment, I called everyone. You ever had someone that something happens to them and they try to keep it in because, you know, things might work. And I'm a believer in that. I tell people all the time, don't talk shit about your significant other if tomorrow you're going to love her all over again. You know what I'm saying? Choose your words wisely. But at that very moment, I called my sister, my mother, my grandmother. I called everyone I knew, because I knew that this is it. I can't come back from this. You know, my sister got me. And the next day she called me back and she said, I'm sorry. I'm sorry. Dude, I had to miss work. I almost got fired. I had my face all scratched up. And now you say sorry. And I told her, I was like, I remember telling her, I said, look, I need to go home and I need to pick up some stuff. I don't know what's going to happen, but I need to be alone right now. We can't be together. It's escalated too bad. And I remember my sister drove me to the house, and my sister's listening to this right now probably, and she doesn't even know about this. So my sister dropped me off in front of the building, and she goes, you want me to go up with you? And I was like, no, I'm good. I'm good. And I regret those words, Dr. Dan and Eric. I regret those words every day of my life. I regret those words because I thought, knowing how she was and how she would escalate and then come back down, and, you know, seeing those multiple personalities, I was like, maybe she'll be okay. And I remember I walked into the house and she was sitting in the sofa. I said, hey. I walked right into the room. I grabbed a garbage bag. I started throwing everything in a garbage bag, whatever I could find. And she was quiet. And then like probably like 4 minutes go in. And as soon as I'm about to walk out, she comes into the room with a knife. But not just like a regular knife, dude, like the biggest knife that we had in the kitchen. And she's like, why? And I'm like, stop messing around, please stop. You know, now like she's on one side of the bed and I'm in the other. And I'm like, nah, stop joking around. She's like, why? And I'm like, oh my God, you know? And I remember she came around the bed and I grabbed the pillow and I slapped the knife out of her hand. And I pushed her and I ran. But when I got to the front door, she had locked everything. She had locked all the locks. She had put the chain on it. And I realized I'm not gonna be able to get back out, you know? So I had to run back into the house, into the living room. And she came at me again. The same thing. Why? You know? And I grabbed another pillow, the same move, but I ran and I locked myself in the room this time around. I was like, I locked myself in the room. And I remember locking the door and doing this. You know how you hold the door? You know, sometimes some people put their shoulder on the door, you know, put their back on it so that you won't get in. I did this. And I tell you, I would never forget this. And it's hurting me right now just thinking about it. But as I had my hands like this, I saw the knife go right through the door and it stopped this close to my face. At that point, I opened the door, I grabbed her, and I flung her. And it sucks that I have to say that, but it justifies your Eric. Like, what do you do when you're in that situation? I once the knife was through the door, I opened the door and I flung her across the bed. I grabbed the bag and ran out the house. This whole ordeal must have took 15 minutes. To me, it felt like an hour. It felt like, look at my hairs. It felt like a scary movie. You know, like, wow, this is the person that loves me. You know what I'm saying? Loves me, and how can you stand in front of me? And how'd you just tell me you're sorry? And now how you stand in front of me with this knife? You know, and I walked away. And it was crazy because despite all of that, Dr. Dan and Eric, a few weeks later, I tried and I went back. Wow. And now at this point, I got my family backing me up, so I have the family support because they know how crazy. I couldn't hide it. I could every time someone does something to you that you could hide, chances are you are gonna hide it. But I couldn't hide this. I had a busted lip. I had scratches all over my face. I looked like I got into a fight with a cat. It was that bad. And I couldn't hide it. And I still went back. I don't know why. It didn't last long, 2 days. And I saw the attitude come back again and I walked away. But yeah, that's my walk in the walk. And it's crazy that and it feels good to share it. And I hope it inspires someone who's viewing or listening that, it's okay to talk about it. It doesn't make me any less of a man. You know what I'm saying? But as much as I hid it inside, I told myself, I'm like, I need to talk about this because this is probably one of the reasons why my present relationships don't work. You know what I'm saying? Because here I am thinking I'm hiding it and I'm perfectly fine. And God knows the damage that this has done to me. And I haven't really accepted it.
Yeah, I mean, first of all, Edgar, I want to thank you for sharing that. I can only imagine how hard it would be to talk about it.
Yeah.
I'm honored that you share it with me and Eric. I think it's incredibly brave that you're sharing it with the viewing audience as well and listening audience. Mm-hmm. So this is gonna be one I think we'll have to back you up over time. Like unlike my walking the walk from last week where I'm intact about that. I'm past that. You're working this through, and when I think about it, as you were describing it, it was like watching a scary movie. I just was like, I cannot believe that you lived through that. And
me neither. But I knew Edgar at the time, and I would see him and his partner all the time, and I would have never known.
Right.
I would have never known.
And how would it even be possible that this wouldn't be affecting you going forward? It's like, that's the thing about abuse. It's very hard to put it away. This gets back to the question at the beginning of the show. To really put it away, you have to really fully understand it. You got to get to peace with yourself about it. You got to figure, and that's a lot. That's a lot to bear. So, I want to give you a big hug on this one. It's like.
It's crazy because my sister don't know this, and now she will. And I remember probably when I came back down to the car, I must have been like I must have been like I just went through this trauma. This is like horrible. It's like somebody trying to kill you in the street that you don't know, and what that does to you as a human being moving forward. And I remember she goes, "Everything's okay," and I was like, "Yeah, let's just go." Right there and then.
Wow.
Right there and then. I could have been like, no, it's not okay. She tried to do this, she tried to do that. And I could have spoken up, maybe when I did go back a few weeks later, maybe my sister would have never let that happen. That's it. Enough is enough. But it's crazy.
But the fact that you're getting it out now, Edgar, I think is really important though. Like people need to see that, here's a guy, 6'2", 240, physical, but you would think he would have no issues. And it just goes to show you that, it's more prevalent than we think. There's a lot more of this going on than we think. I feel for you, Ed, that you had to even go through that. But I'm so glad that you're at a point where you're talking, because I remember there was a time you would never talk, like you said. So the fact that you're talking about it, that's the most important first step. And then you kind of work out everything else as you move along. But I think guys need to see themselves in you in this story and to understand that we can be victims too. And we can be paralyzed with the same fear as a woman in a domestic violence relationship. And then we even go back, even after being abused, we return to the relationship. So it's not, it's a male issue that doesn't get talked about a lot. And that's why I'm glad we brought up the topic, but I'm really glad that you shared your story because I think it's important.
Thank you. And I want, thank you both. Thank you. it feels good that I can have both you guys. At the end of the day, we're doing a show to bring awareness, but it's like I tell a joke around. I got free therapy right here with both you guys. You know, I mean, Dr. Dan is certified, and Eric gives the best advice at times without even realizing it. But I want the viewers and the listeners to know that that wasn't easy. That wasn't easy for me. Thinking about it the whole week, I was thinking about it. You know, thinking about like, okay, how am I gonna share this? You know, you start getting into your own thoughts, like, what are people gonna? How are people gonna see me after I open up about this? And I was doubting, a lot of doubts in my head. Should I even go there? Should I say it? And God knows what's gonna happen after we finish this and how I go from there. But I am glad I let it out. I'm glad I let it out. I know, and I even might have made it seem easy, but trust me, it's not. I'm holding it in right now. You know, I'm holding it in, and I want you guys to know that you're not alone. If you're going through this, please speak up, man. You know, talk to someone. There's no embarrassing. You shouldn't be embarrassed. At the end of the day, we're men. We have feelings, and we're, you know, just like women at the same time. We're human. And thank you guys for listening to me.
Thank you again for sharing.
We're running really low on time, so I guess next week we could recap on this some more, because I would love to get some more feedback from you, Dr. Dan, as to what do I do now? Because that's what I'm afraid of. Right now, I'm afraid that I just opened Pandora's box. And now all those memories, all those things that I hate inside so much are going to come out. And I'm going to feel just like the viewer, you know, that whole anger and, you know, issues.
Well, I mean, first of all, Eric and I are here for you, and we will help to bolster you in that. But what I find is that when people do open up, it's not nearly as bad as when they're holding it in. And it's funny because, like, in a way, we could totally capture this show in that moment when you got back in that car with your sister and she said, "Everything okay?" And you were like, "Everything's fine, let's just go." That is what we do. That's what so many people do. Mm-hmm. And so I just want to encourage you. It's natural to be scared, but you've already done the scariest part. The two scariest parts. First of all, you lived through it. And then secondly, you told the tale. Those are the two hardest parts. And remember, anyone, and this is not just for you, Edgar, but for anybody out there, if you tell a very important story to you and the other person doesn't get it, that's on them. Don't even worry about that. Mm-hmm. When I walked the walk last week, I decided, you know what? I don't care what anybody else thinks. I know what it was. Mm-hmm. And that's what you're doing here. So I applaud you. Thank you. This is one I know we'll talk more about for sure.
Absolutely.
Definitely. I definitely want to talk about it. So we'll pick it up next week, because I guess next week I have a lot more questions now that I'm dealing with it. Now it's crazy. It's making me question everything that I've done since that point in my life, as far as relationships and, you know, how they haven't worked and whatnot. And I'm wondering, does this have something to do with it? And I guess we'll find out. And for everybody viewing and listening, man, thank you. And stay tuned. We'll definitely continue this conversation. Absolutely. Just know that domestic abuse goes both ways. I'm glad that we brought up this topic. I'm glad that that we talked about it. Thank you to the listener who started the whole thing, because without that question, thank you, man. And I tell everyone at home, first of all, shout outs to the women watching. Please share this with your man or your brother or your father or anyone you feel may need or could learn something from this. And please keep commenting on the bottom, you know, follow us, you know, all our handles are on there. Follow us and comment and share. That's all we need. We need to spread awareness to this and let you guys know that you're not alone. You're not alone out there, and there's always someone willing to listen. So
that's right.
Thank you both. And you wanna take us out, Dr. Dan?
Absolutely. All right. And thank you again, Edgar. It's really an honor, and we'll talk more about it.
Thank you.
If you haven't already, click subscribe, ring the bell for notifications, hit like if you like what you're hearing, and put your comments below, and we'll get back to you personally.
That's it. Have a good one. See you next week. Peace.
Brothers in arms.
Boom.